Not all questions are meant to be asked, but to find ones that cannot stay buried. This is Answer.
Vampires aren't just a product of horror movies. Ancient civilizations had their own blood-sucking legends long before Dracula existed. The idea of undead creatures feeding on the living goes back thousands of years. Some of the earliest recorded vampire cases are way older than you'd expect. And yes, people actually believed these stories, so much that they took extreme measures to stop them. Let's dig up the oldest vampire stories in history and why people were so afraid of them. The short answer: the oldest vampire case on record. The first recorded vampire case? That depends on how you define vampire, but here are some of the oldest documented examples. The Uper of 1047. A Russian text mentions a prince calling someone an Uper, the Slavic word for vampire. The 1700s vampire panic, the first official vampire cases in Europe, including exhumed bodies that hadn't decayed. Ancient Greece and Rome, myths of the Lamia and Striges, demon-like creatures that drank blood. People didn't just tell these stories. They believed them enough to dig up graves and kill suspected vampires. The real vampire prevention methods, how people fought back. Afraid of vampires? Ancient people definitely were. Here's how they tried to stop them. Staking the corpse. The classic move, a wooden stake through the heart to keep the undead dead. Decapitation. Some cultures cut off heads and buried them separately to prevent rising from the grave. Stuffing the mouth. Corpses were sometimes found with bricks, stones, or coins in their mouths, just in case they tried to bite. Modern horror movies have nothing on the stuff people actually did to fight vampires. The most terrifying ancient vampire cases, true stories. These are some of the creepiest real historical vampire cases. Peter Blagojevich, 1725, a Serbian man, allegedly died. But then his family claimed he came back to attack them. Arnold Powell, 1726, another Serbian case where a man reportedly drank blood after his death. The Vampire of Venice, a 16th century skeleton was found with a brick forced into its mouth, a classic vampire prevention method. So did people really see vampires, or were these just eerie misunderstandings of disease and decomposition? The science behind the vampire myth, it wasn't supernatural. Most vampire stories have some basis in reality, but science has explanations for a lot of them. Tuberculosis, TB, victims coughed up blood, lost weight, and seemed to waste away, classic vampire symptoms. Rabies symptoms include aggression, biting, and sensitivity to sunlight. Sound familiar? Post-mortem changes. Bodies decompose in weird ways, making people believe the dead were still alive. Turns out vampires weren't supernatural. They were just misunderstood medicine and creepy biology. Final thoughts: would you have believed in vampires? If you lived back then and saw a corpse looking too fresh, would you assume it was a vampire? A lot of people did. Imagine hearing first-hand stories about people rising from the grave. Would you believe it? If you had to fight off a vampire, which ancient method would you use? And most importantly, what if one day scientists found a real vampire? Let me know what you think. And if you love weird history and creepy myths, be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because who knows what strange stories we'll dig up next.